Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
What's up, everybody, and welcome in to the Legal Hands to the Face show with Bill Colarulo. Our weekly show, Monday night, after our first weekend in 5 months without NFL football. Unless you consider the Pro Bowl games NFL football. I don't. In fact, I didn't watch a single second of it, other than what I saw on social media and some of the highlights. But other than that, no interest in the Pro Bowl games. But from what I hear, it was entertaining. A little bit more entertaining than what the Pro Bowl used to be. But we are here live on the Legal Hands to the Face show. We are simulcast both on the JAKIB Sports Network, as well as all my social media platforms, Bill Colarulo and Legal Hands to the Face. We're going to take the audio and upload it to all the podcast platforms. So a lot of you are listening to the audio. This is a live show that was recorded Monday, February 5th, at 6 p.m. So if you are listening to the audio, do me a huge favor. Leave me a review wherever you're listening to this podcast. Will really help us reach more Eagles fans. But we are also live on TikTok as well. I see the TikTok crew checking in. And I see my Legal Hands to the Face crew checking in on YouTube as well. Make sure you're subscribed to my YouTube channel. And make sure you're subscribed to the JAKIB Sports Network as well. And I saw some of you this morning. I do the Philly Sports Power Hour every day from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. But this is a weekly show. So we have a week's worth of news to talk about with our Philadelphia Eagles. So if you follow me and you follow the Philly Sports Power Hour, you may have heard some of these topics before. But this is our weekly show. So we're going to dive right in. But I see flexing and stepping in the chat. Philly 007, Chuck Hutton, Dirty D, Chwiz, Mary Mayer, Brian Lippincott. And I see a lot of people checking in on TikTok as well. But we are now 6 years removed from Super Bowl 52. Yesterday, February 4th, amazingly, was the 6-year anniversary of the greatest day in all of our lives as a Philadelphia sports fan. I know we had the 74 Flyers and the 75 Flyers and the 1980 Phillies, the 1983 76ers, the 08 Phillies. But for me, none of those can hold a candle to February 4th, 2018, when the Philadelphia Eagles brought this team, this city, this organization, its first Super Bowl in their history. And I was lucky enough to be in the building in Minnesota. And I want to talk about tonight on the Legal Hands to the Face show some of the most underrated plays in that game. Some of the forgotten plays in that game. And if you tuned in for the Philly Sports Power Hour, you know the play I think is the most underrated play in the Super Bowl for our Philadelphia Eagles. Everybody remembers all the big ones, but there's one play that I think gets forgotten too often. So we'll get into that. I also want to talk about Carl Weathers Apollo Creed passed away this weekend. And I have to give him the respect that he deserves by talking a little bit about him on the Legal Hands to the Face show. I know it's not Eagles related, but you could not grow up in the city of Philadelphia without loving and knowing Apollo Creed, Carl Weathers. So we'll talk about that as well. And then I want to talk about what this Philadelphia Eagles team needs. What this Philadelphia Eagles team needs to get back to being a contender in 2024. And specifically, who needs a better 2024 to make that happen? Nick Sirianni or Howie Roseman? And when you first hear the question, you may think, oh, well, Nick Sirianni, he had such a bad 2023. But teaser, and we'll get there, for me, it's Howie Roseman, and I'll explain why. But let's first stick with the positive. Let's talk about the 6-year anniversary of the greatest day in our lives as Philadelphia sports fans. Super Bowl 52. Now, as you guys know, I also host a weekend show for 97.5 The Fanatic every Saturday and Sunday from 9 to 12 p. Make sure you tune in. Make sure you call in. But I talked about this weekend, and a listener called up and said, we sold our soul to the devil for Super Bowl 52. And because of it, that's all the heartbreak we've had since then. I'd do it all again, man. I know it's been a rough year and a half, but I'd do it all again because Super Bowl 52, the feeling we all had that night, when Tom Brady's Hail Mary gets knocked down and you looked at the clock and you saw there were 0 seconds left on it, and it was 41-33 Philadelphia Eagles. I get goosebumps just talking about it. But it has been a pretty rough year and a half. You could go all the way back to the 2022 Phillies losing in the World Series. The Eagles up 10 in Super Bowl 57, losing that game. The holding penalty on James Bradbury. The Sixers losing again in the second round. The Philadelphia Union losing in the Eastern Conference semis on a controversial goal. Then the 2023 Phillies up 2-0 in the NLCS, losing. The Eagles being 10-1 to start the season and then losing 6 of 7. And now, if you're a Sixers fan, Joel Embiid. Hasn't been a great year. You can throw the Flyers in there too, with all the drama now surrounding that team on a 5-game losing streak. And us as Philadelphia fans, we've experienced not only a lot of heartbreak over the last year and a half, but a lot of heartbreak our entire lives. I was born in 1983, about a week after the Sixers won their NBA championship. But I think when I was truly introduced to the heartbreak of Philadelphia was when I was 10 years old, 1993, Joe Carter. Because I'm not old enough to remember the 1987 Flyers. But I remember 93 Joe Carter. I remember 1997, the Flyers getting swept by the Red Wings. The 2000 NHL Eastern Conference Finals, Eric Lindros getting lit up at the blue line by Scott Stevens. And of course, all those NFC Championship game heartbreaks with Andy Reid and Donovan McNabb. None worse than the last game at Veterans Stadium. It was supposed to be poetic. Still have nightmares of Rondé Barber taking it the other way. And then they did it again the next year with Jake Delhomme and the Carolina Panthers. Then they finally get over the hump. Super Bowl 39, they lose that game. Then the 2010 Stanley Cup Finals, Patrick Kane Man, it's been so much heartbreak. But that's what made Super Bowl 52 so damn sweet. But a lot of people, we all remember the big plays in that game. We all remember LeGarrette Blount's 21-yard touchdown run. Beautiful run by Blount. And we're going to talk about Howie Roseman later on in the show and how I think he needs to have a better 2024 than even Nick Sirianni for this team to be able to compete. But you look back at that 2017 Philadelphia Eagles team, and you look at the offseason before that season, and every single move Howie Roseman made worked. You look at this season that we just had, and pretty much every single move Howie Roseman made in the offseason didn't work. But while we are keeping it positive in 2017, LeGarrette Blount was one of those moves. Chris Long was one of those moves. Jay Ajayi in the middle of the season was one of those moves. But Blount has that awesome 21-yard touchdown run. Alshon Jeffrey's 34-yard touchdown catch, where he goes up and just snags it out of the air. Obviously, the Philly special. We all remember that. You want Philly, Philly? Yeah, let's do it. Corey Clement's 22-yard catch in the back of the end zone. Gene Serator replaying it. Did he lose control? Did he not lose control? I thought for sure they were going to overturn that. Obviously, Zach Ertz scoring the touchdown to give them the lead in the fourth quarter. And then the BG strip sack of the GOAT, Tom Brady. Memorable, memorable plays. But we all remember those big plays. But there are so many underrated plays that we can't forget. And my man, RJ Ramirez, in the chat, this is one of the ones I wanted to talk about. Malcolm Jenkins' hit on Brandon Cooks knocks him out of the game, sets the tone for that defense. And I said it today on the Power Hour. Malcolm Jenkins, I think we are starting to appreciate him more and more. But Malcolm Jenkins may have been one of the best leaders this Eagles organization has ever had. And the year that Howie Roseman signed him, he wasn't the big name. He wasn't the big name safety that everybody wanted that year. And I can't remember who it was. I want to go back and look as to who the safety was that everybody wanted. But Malcolm Jenkins turned out to be an unbelievable signing for this team. Great leader, great safety. But that's one of the plays. One of the other ones, and Murray Jacob, he's got it. Zach Ertz, fourth down catch in the fourth with Philly trailing. That's one of the forgotten plays. Nick Foles under pressure. Has to slide left. Makes the throw. First down. Keeps the drive alive. Huge underrated play in that game. Before the Philly special, Corey Clement's wheel route, breaking the tackle, taking the all the way down inside the 5. Without that play, the Philly special never happens. Rodney McLeod stopping Brandon Cooks on that end around inside the red zone. Tom Brady dropping the pass on the Patriots version of the Philly special. There were all these little plays. And Murray Jacob just reminded me, and that is correct. TJ Ward was the other safety that everybody wanted that year instead of Malcolm Jenkins. Everyone thought Howie signed the second-tier safety, the lesser safety, and it turned out to be an unbelievable signing. But for me, the most underrated, forgotten play from that Super Bowl was rookie Jake Elliott's 46-yard field goal with only 1 minute left in the game. Everybody remembers BG's strip sack. But the game wasn't over at that point. The Eagles were only up 5. There was 1:05 left. 4th down. And rookie Jake Elliott comes out in the biggest moment of his life to kick a 46-yard field goal. A 46-yard field goal should be made, but in that moment, with all the pressure to win a Super Bowl, as a rookie, if he misses that kick, Tom Brady gets the ball back near midfield with a minute left, only down 5. If Elliott misses that kick, I think the Philadelphia Eagles lose Super Bowl 52. For me, that is one of the most underrated, forgotten plays. And now, what we know about Jake Elliott, that he's the most clutch kicker we've ever seen in an Eagles uniform, of course he made that kick. But he was only a rookie. We didn't know much. We knew he hit that bomb against the Giants in overtime. But what a kick. For me, the most underrated kick. And I see all of you in the chat. Love talk. I want to go back and watch that. That'll make me feel better. I must have watched Super Bowl 52 at least 10 times. At least 10 damn times. I even bought the video of the whole season, the whole 2017 season. I've watched that a bunch of times. I will never get sick of it. How many times, if you're here in the chat, how many times have you watched Super Bowl 52? The crazy thing is, as many times as I have watched Super Bowl 52, I've watched Super Bowl 57 only once. It's not in my heart. I can't do it, man. I can't go back and watch last year's Super Bowl. It literally breaks my heart. If I see it on the NFL Network, I got to turn it off. I was like in the fetal position last year when that game ended. Insane, man. I don't want to bring us down. Let's talk about Super Bowl 52, because every time I think about Super Bowl 57 and Murray Jacob, good point, man. Nelson Aguilar was clutch in that game. Say what we want to say about Nelson Aguilar. An up and down season, or a career, I should say, in Philadelphia. But he delivered. He delivered in Super Bowl 52. Everybody delivered. But that's our little trip down memory lane with Super Bowl 52. And I want to give a little bit of time to Carl Weathers. Apollo Creed. Being an Italian from the South Philadelphia area, of course, one of my dad's favorite movies growing up was Rocky. He was freshman in college, right after graduated high school. So I grew up watching all of the Rockies. I was born in 83, so I was growing up. I don't even remember how old I was, but I, at a very young age, had seen Rocky 1, Rocky 2, Rocky 3, and then obviously Rocky 4, and every other one that came after. Rocky 5, even though it sucked, I'll still watch it. Rocky Balboa, very underrated movie. And then obviously all the Creeds. I just can't get enough of all those characters. But unfortunately, Carl Weathers, Apollo Creed, passes away at the age of 76. And I said it today on the Power Hour. Some celebrity deaths hit you harder than others. And this one hits me hard because I grew up loving Apollo Creed, loving Carl Weathers. And then all that love increased when I'm about 12. and Happy Gilmore comes out, and now you see Apollo Creed playing Chubbs. Just an absolute great actor, man. And Sylvester Stallone did a little tribute to Carl Weathers and talked about how the Rocky franchise would not have had the success that it had without Carl Weathers playing Apollo Creed. And I agree. Carl Weathers as Apollo Creed was perfect. And growing up watching those Rockies with Apollo being the enemy, then becoming his friend and trainer, then becoming the victim in Rocky IV. Awesome franchise, man. Awesome. But let's jump over to our 2024 Philadelphia Eagles, because reality has officially set in after having no NFL football this past weekend. 2023 is over. 2023 is over. At least for the Eagles, because there's still a Super Bowl next week. And I see in the chat here, Jameson Smith, did you see the 49ers already complaining about the Vegas field? I thought that they were complaining about their practice field, if I'm not mistaken. They thought the UNLV practice field that they were given to practice on was a little soft. They don't like that field. But does it surprise you that it's the San Francisco 49ers after what happened last year? Keith Saunders, spot on, man. Niners always complaining. And they got so lucky in that NFC Championship game with Dan Campbell making some horrible decisions. But anyway, we'll talk a little bit about the Super Bowl before the show ends. And like we end every Legal Hands to the Face show, I got a little Eagles trivia for you. But I want to talk about 2024. It's here. The offseason will be here in a week for everybody. Free agency starts pretty much a month from now. Then the draft. So that's the beautiful thing about the NFL. Super Bowl Sunday, and then in about 30 days, we got free agency to talk about. But as we sit here right now, and I asked this question on 97.5 The Fanatic this weekend, who needs to have a better 2024 for this Eagles team to be considered a contender again? I'm not talking about who needs a better 2024 to save their jobs, because then it's a clear answer. It's Nick Sirianni. Howie Roseman's not going anywhere. So if we're talking about saving their jobs, yes, it's Sirianni. But what I'm talking about is who needs to have a better 2024 to make this team a contender again. And for me, it's an obvious answer that it's Howie Roseman. As angry as a lot of people were at Nick Sirianni for the way the season ended, and yes, it wasn't a great ending, I think Sirianni, as far as a coaching staff goes, is set up perfectly. He's just a CEO now. He's got Kellen Moore, an offensive coordinator with 5 years of experience calling plays. He has Vic Fangio, a defensive coordinator with 20 years of experience. A lot different than what they did this past season. They went into this past season with coordinators who had a combined 1 year of experience. They now have a combined 25 years of experience. Brian Johnson had never called offensive plays before. That's not what you have this year. So now Nick Sirianni gets to go into this season as a true CEO coach. And if we needed more evidence that this is going to be Kellen Moore's offense, he just brought in his quarterback coach, Doug Nussmeier, the guy who was with him in LA, the guy who was with him for a couple of years in Dallas. So that shows to me that this truly is going to be Kellen Moore's offense. And I'm completely good with that. I know a lot of people have problems with Nick Sirianni. You know my position on this. If you follow me, you know I wanted Sirianni back after I let my emotions settle down. To me, it was the right call. And I think Nick can have a lot of success as a CEO coach. When you listen to what these veterans are saying about him, you listen to what Jason Kelsey said about him on the New Heights podcast. He said Nick Sirianni is one of the best coaches he's been around when it comes to holding players accountable, motivating players. This is a guy, Jason Kelsey, who played for Andy Reid. So I'm completely fine with Sirianni being a CEO coach. And you look at last week, Dan Campbell as a CEO coach and the terrible decisions he's made. As bad as things were last year, Sirianni's been pretty good making decisions in games. I really don't remember a time where he went for it on fourth down or chose not to go for it on fourth down and disagreeing. I felt that he has been appropriately aggressive. So I'm great with Sirianni being a CEO coach. And you look around the NFC East now that we know who all the coaches are. I said this on the Power Hour last week. Nick Sirianni, in my opinion, with Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio, have the best coaching staff in the NFC East. Look around the NFC East. Brian Dable, 15, 19, and 1 as a head coach. Mike Kafka as his offensive coordinator. They just hired Shane Bowen about an hour before we came live on the air. Former defensive coordinator for the Tennessee Titans. Doesn't impress me. You look at Dallas. They've kept Mike McCarthy. No championship appearances in the last 7 years. And he's never been to a championship game with a quarterback not named Aaron Rodgers. And remember, no coach in NFL history has ever won a Super Bowl with 2 franchises. Do we really think it's going to be Mike McCarthy and the Dallas Cowboys? And now McCarthy loses his defensive coordinator in Dan Quinn. And the candidate that could have replaced Dan Quinn, Joe Witt Jr., also leaves to go to Washington. That weakens the Cowboys. And now you put Dan Quinn on the Commanders as a head coach. You don't scare me as a head coach. He's a good defensive coordinator, but he's not going to be the defensive coordinator. He's going to be a CEO type coach in Washington. He said it today. Joe Witt will run the defense. Well, Dan Quinn in his last 3 seasons as a head coach in Atlanta was 14-23. He's also the coach who blew a 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl to the New England Patriots. So when you look at Nick Sirianni, as bad as the last 7 games were, he's 36-20. He's brought his team to 3 straight playoff appearances in his first 3 years. Nick Sirianni's the best coach in the NFC East. When you add in the coordinators as well, we have the best coaching staff. But the guy that I think needs to have a better 2024 is Howie Roseman. We're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, I want to go through why I think this 2024 season is on Howie Roseman's shoulders, because there are so many question marks in the personnel department. I'm fine with the coaches. So stay tuned, guys, because when we get back, we're going to jump into the personnel and why Howie Roseman needs to have a great 2024. And then I'll give you the trivia question, like we end every Legal Hands of the Face show. And I'll give you my prediction, because we will not be talking again until after Super Bowl 58. So stay tuned. Hit that like button. Hit that share button. We'll be right back.
Any professional sports coach will tell you there's no substitution for preparation. At Malamut & Associates, that is a tenet by which we live. We prepare from day one for victory. Anything less is not acceptable.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia Dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
Underdog Fantasy has a way for you to play alongside your favorite football team all season long with their fantasy pick'em game. You pick between 2 to 5 players, select whether they'll go higher or lower on one of their stats, then do what you usually do on a Sunday, watch the games. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single game by going 5 for 5. It's a fantasy game, and the Sports Betting Show wants you to get involved. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. When you sign up, use the promo code WIN, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
EAGLES, Eagles.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back into the Legal Hands to the Face show with Bill Colarulo. Before the break, we were talking about why I think Nick Sirianni, along with this coaching staff, offensive coordinator Kellen Moore, defensive coordinator Vic Fangio, you could even throw in special teams coordinator Michael Clay, who after last year I never would have thought I'd be sitting up here saying he's a good special teams coach, but that was the one bright spot on this coaching staff last season. But we were talking about why I think that coaching staff is the best in the NFC East. When you look around the NFC East, there's not much competition. But whether you were happy or not with the way the season ended, and I'm sure you were unhappy, as you should be, the NFC East is there for the taking. The Dallas Cowboys are in a worse spot from a coaching perspective. Lame duck coach in Mike McCarthy. Lost their defensive coordinator in Dan Quinn. Lost their passing game coordinator on the defensive side of the ball in Joe Witt. And I think the Washington Commanders are in a worse spot now. They just lost Eric Bieniemy at offensive coordinator, and Dan Quinn is replacing him with Cliff Kingsbury. To me, that is a downgrade. And you look at the Giants, still Brian Dable and Daniel Jones. And they just hired Shane Bowen to replace Wink Martindale at defensive coordinator. I feel good about the coaching staff, especially when you compare them to the rest of the NFC East. But the big question marks for me is this personnel. And that's why we need Howie Roseman to have a better 2024 than Nick Sirianni. There are so many question marks with the personnel. First of all, there's a ton of free agents. On offense, Olamide Zaccheaus, Quez Watkins, Albert O, Jack Stoll, DeAndre Swift, Boston Scott, Rashad Penny, Marcus Mariota, Jack Driscoll, Sua Opeta, Jason Kelsey. Then you look at the defense. Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, Shaq Leonard, Zach Cunningham, Sean Bradley, Nick Morrow, Justin Evans. There are a ton of question marks on both sides of the football. Now, offense should be a little bit easier because even if Jason Kelce retires, and I want to talk about him later in the show, but even if Jason Kelce retires, hopefully you move Cam Jurgens over to center. And now the big question mark is, who is your right guard? Is Tyler Steen ready, the rookie they drafted last year? Who's your wide receiver 3? I think you need to upgrade that position. Who's your backup tight end? I think we need to upgrade that position. Jack Stoll, he can block, not a very good receiver. And he's a free agent. Grant Calcaterra, still under contract, he can't block. I want a dual threat as your backup tight end that can step in, one, if Dallas Goedert gets hurt, because we've seen that 2 years in a row. But I also want to see the Philadelphia Eagles able to run that 12 personnel with 2 tight ends and have 2 dual threats at tight end. Guys who can block like offensive linemen and catch like wide receivers. And I want to see, what are they going to do at running back? No DeAndre Swift, unless they re-sign him. Boston Scott's a free agent. Rashad Penny, free agent. Still not sure why they kept Rashad Penny. And as we're live on the air here, I see you guys in the chat, and I just saw it pop up on my computer. It's been announced that the Eagles will play the first ever game in Brazil in 2024. It will be on a Friday night in week 1 of the NFL season. Pretty cool. I like that it's week 1. So you don't have to worry about the travel and all that, hopefully. So, interesting. But they will be the home team. So now they will lose a home game at the link. Do you think Brazil knows what they're in for? Because they're going to get flooded with Eagles fans, man. You think they know what they're in for with all these Eagles fans coming to town? So, pretty cool. But you look at all these question marks on both sides of the ball. And one of the question marks that I can't even believe this was an issue this week. I hate that we're even going to take time to address it, but I have to because it was all over the place this week. Trading A.J. Brown. Okay? If you follow me, you saw me post a video about this. It's ridiculous. It's not happening. It doesn't make any sense. First of all, let's just look at his production on the field, and then I'll explain why it doesn't make any sense off the field from a contractual perspective. But on the field, his first year with the Eagles, 2022, sets a franchise record for the most yards in a season. Last year, he comes 40 yards short of doing it again, so now he sits at number 1 and number 2 in franchise history for the most yards in a regular season. And then there was all this talk. Oh, well, look what happened when he wasn't getting as many targets at the end of the year. He was so unhappy with his targets at the end of the year. So I went back and looked. The first 8 games, he averaged 10 targets a game. The next 8 games, not including the Giants game because he got hurt, he averaged 9 targets a game. He was pretty much averaging the same amount of targets the beginning of the year and the end of the year. So I'm not buying that he was unhappy with his targets. In fact, career high in targets, 158 targets in 2023. Career high. 108 catches. Career high. All the chatter that he was unhappy with his targets and his production doesn't make sense. And everything you hear and everything I hear is that A.J. Brown's very well liked. So all this talk about how he's a diva and all, it's just not true. The team seems to really like him. And if you read Joe Santoliquido's article in Bleeding Green Nation about Jalen Hurts as a leader, what it said in there was a lot of times he defers to A.J. Brown. because A.J. Brown's such a vocal leader in that locker room. But even taking all of that, I still see people saying, well, you got to save the money. You don't save any money by trading A.J. Brown. If he's on the team in 2024, A.J. Brown's cap hit is $12.4 million. If you do anything before June 1st, his cap hit skyrockets to $41.3 million. So clearly, they're not doing anything pre-June 1st. But if they did anything post-June 1st, his cap hit drops from 12.4 to 10.5. They would save $1.8 million, which is nothing on the salary cap. So it doesn't make any sense to move on from your best wide receiver, one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, to save $1.8 million. And if we want to see Jalen Hurts get back to an MVP caliber play, do you really think taking his best wide receiver is the way to do it? And I've had some Eagles fans say to me, well, do it and then draft a wide receiver. Yeah, because Howie Roseman has had such success in drafting wide receivers. Outside of Devontae Smith, we really want to go down that road again with the Jalen Ragers and J.J. Arcega-Whitesides of the world? It doesn't make any sense. I want to see them upgrade their third wide receiver, not get rid of their number one wide receiver. I think they need a third option on this damn team. But when we look at stars on this team, we should not be talking about A.J. Brown. The player we should be talking about, and again, if you follow me, you've heard this, is Hassan Reddick. Because Hassan Reddick's contract is a problem this year. It's a problem because Hassan Reddick's not happy with it, but it's also a problem because I don't think the Eagles are going to be happy with his cap hit. Before the season started, Hassan Reddick wasn't happy with his deal. He signed a 3-year, $45 million deal in 2022. He now enters into the final year of that deal. He wasn't happy with it last year. He's certainly not going to be happy with it going into the final year of it when he feels he's underpaid. And he is underpaid. He makes an average annual salary of $15 million. You look at the top pass rushers in the league, and we can debate whether he's on their level. I don't think he's TJ Watt or Myles Garrett, but these guys are making $25, $30 million a year. And there are a lot of other guys mixed in between who make more money than Hassan Reddick does. So we know he wants a new deal. But now the Eagles are also going to want to get out of that deal because his cap hit last year was $6.9 million. We know Howie Roseman loves to backload his contracts. So next season, this season coming up, Hassan Reddick's cap hit would go from 6.9 to 21.8. There's no way the Eagles are going to want him to play on that deal if the cap hit is $21.8 million. And unlike A.J. Brown, where they would only save $1.8 million if they did something post-June 1st, with Hassan Reddick, if they were to trade him, and I'm not suggesting they should, we'll get there, but if they were to trade him after June 1st, they would save $16 million on the cap. This is why I'm nervous. Now, what I want to see them do is come to an extension with Hassan Reddick. Extend the deal, lower that cap hit. In an ideal world, that's what we would see happen. But the problem is, what if Reddick wants to be paid like the big dogs in the NFL? Because if you look at the last 4 seasons, Hassan Reddick has 11 or more sacks every single year in the last 4 years. There's only one other player in the entire National Football League who's had more than 11 sacks the last 4 years, and that's Myles Garrett, who's making $25 million a year. So if Reddick draws a line in the sand and says, hey, if you want me to sign an extension, I need to be paid $25 million a year. You may see the Philadelphia Eagles trade Hassan Reddick. I don't want to see that happen. I'm hoping and praying they're going to figure out a way to make this work. But it's not a foregone conclusion that Reddick is back next year. So he's the star player we should all be talking about, not A.J. Brown. So Howie Roseman has his work cut out for him. He's got to figure out what to do on offense, at the running back position, at the right guard position, at the wide receiver 3 position, the backup tight end position. That's just the offense. Then you jump over to the defensive side of the ball. They have to figure out a deal with Hassan Reddick. And it's not just Reddick who's entering into the final year of his deal with a big cap hit. Josh Sweat is also entering into the final year of his deal. Now, his cap hit this year is only $9 million. But does Sweat want to play with only 1 year left on his deal? And I can't imagine that the Eagles want to lose their 2 top edge rushers. They were barely able to get pressure anyway with these 2 guys still on the field. Part of it was because Matt Patricia kept dropping Hassan Reddick back into coverage, which was ridiculous. But they have to bring at least Reddick back. Maybe you don't see Josh Sweat here next year. I don't know. But they need to figure something out. I really firmly believe that if Nolan Smith would have showed us this year a little bit more than what he showed us, I think maybe you would have seen the Eagles a little bit more comfortable to move on from Hassan Reddick. But we don't know what we have in Nolan Smith. I'm not writing him off. He's a rookie. I'm not writing him off. But he hasn't shown us enough that we can say, sure, we're okay moving on from Hassan Reddick. So I want Reddick back. And some people just joining the show, we did talk about it. Yes, the Eagles will play week 1 in Brazil as the home team. So they will lose a game at the Vet, or excuse me, at the Link. Wish we were still at the Vet sometimes. But pretty cool they'll be in Brazil. But there's other question marks on this defense, not only the edge. What are you doing at linebacker? I'm praying to God that Howie Roseman was only giving us lip service at the end of the season press conference and that they're not going into this year with Nakobe Dean and Zach Cunningham as the answers at linebacker. Please. And I would like to see them draft a linebacker, but I need more than that. I don't want to go into this season with unknown Nakobe Dean and unknown rookie linebacker. I want to see the Philadelphia Eagles do something they don't usually do with Howie Roseman, and that's go out and spend money on a free agent linebacker that we know is going to come in here and be able to contribute week 1, game 1 in Brazil. And then what are they doing at safety? Because now Sidney Brown with a torn ACL, will he be ready? Are we confident in Reed Blankenship? I can't imagine Kevin Byard is back. His cap hit goes from $1.7 million to $14 million. So do they try to extend him? Do they move on from him? Howie Roseman has his work cut out for him. And that's why when I say we need Howie Roseman to have a better 2024 than Nick Sirianni for this team to have success, this is what I'm talking about. Sirianni's just a CEO. He's going to have the Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio doing their thing. But we need the personnel, and there's a lot of question marks. And then you look at that secondary. They got to do something with James Bradbury. We cannot have him on this team next year. You're going to have to just eat that money, eat that cap hit. Now, there's some positives. You got Isaiah Rodgers coming off the suspension list, hopefully, the corner they picked up from Indianapolis last year. Hopefully you have Zach McPherson coming back from his Achilles tear. Maybe he can grow into something. Another year with Eli Ricks and Keely Ringo, learning from Vic Fangio, who we've heard is a great teacher of young players. Another year for Jalen Carter. I had Barrett Brooks call into my 97.5 The Fanatic show, and he talked about how he's excited to see maybe Fangio run a lot more 3-4 with Jordan Davis as a true zero technique nose guard, with Jalen Carter and Milton Williams lined up in those 3 technique D tackles, with a Hassan Reddick as an outside linebacker blitzing the quarterback. That would be exciting. But let's hope, because if you're going to do that and you're going to run a 3-4 style defense, you have to have good linebackers in the middle. So Howie Roseman, a lot of question marks. And there's 3 other big question marks. What are we doing with the veteran leaders? What are we doing with Jason Kelce and Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham? This past season, Kelce had a $10 million cap hit. Brandon Graham had a $10 million cap hit. Fletcher Cox only had a $5.7 million cap hit. Now, Kelce's still playing at an all-pro level, literally an all-pro level. Fletcher Cox had one of the best seasons he's had in recent years. BG, he's going to give you everything. He didn't play a ton of reps, played about 25%, close to 30% of the defensive snaps. So I'm going to say something that may get some people upset. All 3 of those guys are legends. All 3 of those guys should never have to buy a drink in this town. They should be beloved forever in Philadelphia. But I'm okay with us putting the love and the nostalgia and the emotions aside and saying, we're going to get younger. We're going to just have to accept the drop-off in play at the center position, and we're going to roll with Cam Jurgens, who's still on a rookie deal. And we're going to slide one of the younger guys into right guard. Hopefully Tyler Steen's ready, and we're going to have to get younger. Because I don't think that this team can afford to pay a center that much money when we have all of these other needs on the defensive side of the football. And I know it is blasphemous in this city to say that you'd be okay with Kelce retiring, but I would be okay with Jason Kelce retiring. It doesn't mean I don't love him. It doesn't mean he's not a legend. It's just I think we need to put our resources elsewhere. And I'm okay with the drop-off in play at center if it means we're able to put that money into building a better defense. And I said that on the radio on Sunday. They clipped it, they tweeted it, and all types of hate on Twitter from people. But I think you need to put the emotions aside, and we have to face reality. There are too many needs on this team for us to pay a center that much money. I love him. But I think we need to get younger, and I think we need to put that money elsewhere. It's hard to say out loud. It is. But you got to be objective, man. And if we want to build this team and we want to build it the right way, I think we have to get younger, and I think we have to move on. So real quick, because we are running out of time, we're only going to do an hour tonight on the Legal Hands to the Face show. Quick prediction for the Super Bowl. I'll be rooting for the Chiefs, baby. There is no way I am going to root for the San Francisco 49ers. Never going to happen. And I certainly would not put my money against Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid in a big game. And I also wouldn't put my money on Kyle Shanahan in a big game because they almost blew it against the Detroit Lions. Kyle Shanahan was the offensive coordinator who blew it in a 28-3 game when Dan Quinn was the head coach. And I told you I was at Super Bowl 52 when the Eagles won. I was also at Super Bowl 54 in Miami when the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan had a lead against the Kansas City Chiefs and they couldn't hold on to it. So I'm going Kansas City. I'm rooting for Big Red. I appreciate greatness. Not a huge Patrick Mahomes fan. I don't love him, but I respect his greatness, and I want to keep rooting for the greatness and Big Red. But like we end every Legal Hands to the Face show with a little Eagles trivia, little Eagles franchise trivia. So we were talking about Jason Kelce, and I was saying how I'd be okay with him retiring. I know, going to get some hate. But Jason Kelce holds the record for the most consecutive games started in franchise history with 156 games. But who holds the record for the most consecutive games played in franchise history? It's a tie between two players. Kelce holds the record for the most consecutive games started, but who holds the record for the most consecutive games played in Philadelphia Eagles franchise history? It's a two-way tie at 162 games. See if you guys can get it in the chat. It is not two kickers. Wine Niners Wine. It is not two kickers. I'll give you a little hint. One of them is a special teams player, but one of them is not. So who holds the record? Philadelphia Eagles franchise history. Most consecutive games played. It's a tough one tonight. While we're waiting for you guys to weigh in on TikTok, I see 215 Philly talking about Patrick Queen, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., and Andrew Van Dinkel at linebacker. I would love to see them get Patrick Queen. I don't know what type of money Patrick Queen's going to want in free agency, but I would love to see them bring in a guy like Patrick Queen, someone who's going to come in here and be able to make an immediate impact. And we're getting one answer coming in on YouTube from Jay Koch, says The Magician. And for those of you who don't know who The Magician is, John Dornbus, long snapper, is one of the correct answers. He played in 162 straight games, which is tied for the most in Philadelphia Eagles franchise history. But who's the other one? And TikTok doesn't see, or excuse me, YouTube doesn't see it, but one of the guys on TikTok got it. Mike McKinney, 355, got it. I'm going to give YouTube one more minute before I give you the other answer. Eagles legend. Transistors N, it's not Kelce. Kelce has the most consecutive games started at 156. But John Dornbus and this player hold the record for the most consecutive games played, and he's a legend. And I can't believe nobody got it except for Mike McKinney, 355 on TikTok. And it's Harold Carmichael, the great number 17. Harold Carmichael played in 162 straight games, which is a franchise record. Him and John Dornbus hold that record. But everybody, I appreciate you spending this hour with me on the Legal Hands to the Face show. Again, if you listen to the audio on the podcast tongue twister here at the end. On the podcast platforms, make sure you're subscribed on the podcast platform, and please leave me a review. Will help us reach more Eagles fans. Make sure you're following me across all social media platforms, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. Make sure you are subscribed to my YouTube channel as well, and follow me on Twitter. Would love to engage with you all on Twitter as well. And hopefully I'll see a lot of you. I see Philly 007 say see you tomorrow. Hopefully I'll see a lot of you tomorrow, 10 a.m. on the Philly Sports Power Hour. That's now also simulcast across the JAKIB Sports networks and my social media as well. So everybody have a great night. Thanks again. Hit that like button, hit that share button. And as always, go Birds.
Go for the polls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.